Hola amigos, bien o no, y saludos desde Medellín. Hoy vamos a hablar con algunos sonidos problemáticos. Es un ejemplo que en algunas oraciones he practicado con uno de mis estudiantes hoy. Es claro que este es un sonido muy difícil. Entonces, una oración en inglés con los tipos de sonidos poco similar pero difícil, y también buscamos por algo para hablar español parecido con el mismo sonido que pueda ayudar un poco para practicar forma sonido, y espero que pueda ilustrar cómo pueda utilizar este tipo de paralelo con un ejemplo, un sonido similar en español que pueda mostrar cómo pueda tomar el sonido en inglés. Listo, esa es la idea de hoy. So, hello from Medellin. Today we're looking at some problem sounds. Now, unsurprisingly, there are quite a few because some of the sounds in English you don't get in Spanish, and similarly, Spanish sounds in English, it's a bit of a tricky one for us as well when we're learning Spanish. But the easiest way generally to try and look for this is when you've identified a problem sound, try and find a couple, not just one, because it's easier to practice these sounds in a sentence. So find a couple of sounds that are similar. So I have acknowledge and fridge. Notice the idge sound is very similar in both cases. So the spelling is different, but the sound is j, j, j. This kind of sound is very similar. So by giving you a longer sentence, even if it is a bit of nonsense really, it helps you practice the sound with a bit more repetition. It's a longer thing to say. And then the other idea is to have a look and see if you can find similar sounds. In this case, because I'm trying to demonstrate from an English sentence, so I'm going to look for Spanish sounds. But when I do this the other way around, I'm trying to learn Spanish, I would look for a similar sound in English as far as I can hear it. So I'm listening for something that, for me, phonetically sounds very close to that sound. Just to warm up the voice a bit with your language you're more familiar with, to get that kind of sound going, and then try again the original sentence that's caused you the problem. And this again is why it's good to use a sentence rather than just a word, because often it's the combination of the sounds around that word that might be causing you more of a problem. It helps you work out whether it's just that sound or whether it's the combination of sounds before that sound that was causing you the problem. Because sometimes it's the transition from one sound to the other. And remember, one of these sounds you have to get conscious of where in the mouth or the throat are you making this sound, because that's part of the problem. The combinations of letters and vowel sounds we have in Spanish and English are a bit different. So you've learnt Spanish, you're more familiar with this type of combinations. When we give you a different type of combination that you don't normally get in Spanish, this is why it's difficult, because you have to retrain the mouth literally to produce that sound. And that's why you have to get very used to thinking about where am I making this all those different sounds we have in English, 44 of them in total, these kind of b, th, t, m, r, these kind of sounds, all in different parts of the mouth. We have to get conscious of how we sound those, because that's what's going to make it easier for us to reproduce these words. But let's have a go at this, because it sounds a bit interesting. So if I read this sentence originally, I acknowledge that this fridge isn't suitable. I acknowledge that this fridge isn't suitable. And notice, acknowledge, fridge. Acknowledge, fridge is a j sound, like a j sound. All right, let's see if we can find some similar sounding words in Spanish. So we have frigida, rigido, and also to some extent calle, because that j sounding, calle. Yeah, frigida, rigido, calle. So it's a similar sound to that j we're looking at in fridge, knowledge. So hopefully this starts to warm up the mouth a bit. We get closer to that sound and where we produce it. Then we look at a similar sentence in Spanish. Again, it's a bit of a nonsense sentence, but it practices the sounds. La calle está rígida y frígida en invierno. La calle está rígida y frígida en invierno. Déjame saber en los comentarios cómo es mi acento. Espero un poco mejor, pero. So, literally, that's how we do it. We listen to the word we're having trouble with, try and find an extra word or two that has a similar sound. So my problem word was acknowledge, very similar sound to fridge. So I put that in the sentence. It gives me a bit more to say, to practice it a bit more easily in a sentence. If that's not helpful enough, I can't quite get it just with that, I'm going to go back and look at similar sounding words, words that to me sound similar to that sound. Doesn't have to be in any way related to the spelling, notice. It's just how you hear the sound. Write yourself another sentence in Spanish, because that's going to help you more. Something again just to practice the sounds. Practice that. La calle está rígida y frígida en invierno. And then see, because you practice this frígida, rígido, calle, j sounds, whether that makes it easier to go back to the problem sentence. I acknowledge that this fridge isn't suitable. Hopefully that's a bit easier to say because you've just trained the voice to look for that part of the mouth where you're making that sound. That's the idea. Okay, give it a go. Déjame saber en los comentarios. But for now, from Medellin, it's Cheerio.